Spiritual Christianity, Chapter 5 continued. Point number 82. But let it not be supposed that in heaven there is any approach to an artificial arrangement in these representative signs. They appear scattered about as if it were by chance, and not in obedience to the supreme law of wisdom, at various distances from one another and from the percipient angel. They change their position as if in obedience to their appetites and habits. They are intermixed with animals of other kinds, pass out of sight, or are replaced by others higher or lower in their organisation, or, according to changes of state, by angelic beings with the same absence of artificial arrangement as in this world, but with far greater beauty and variety in the composition of the ever-changing picture. There is no symmetrical arrangement of these signs, such as a natural man might look for as an indication of design and might think necessary for interpreting the symbols of so vast, so complicated a book. The divine wisdom is in their harmony of order and not in any symmetry of arrangement. This, then, is the ground or reason for the signification of the different orders, tribes, genera, and species of animals in the spiritual world, and by these spiritual means and for these divine ends they are created. Point number 83. There are like points of resemblance between plants and the lower orders of animals in the representative organisations as there are between the animal kingdom generally and man. Plants, however, are yet more simply and rudimentary in their structure, and therefore more remote and indirect in their resemblances to man. They have also a more limited range of function in their different parts, and yet between some animals, which are among the lowest in their organisation, and some plants, the resemblances are so near that it is extremely difficult, if indeed it be not impossible, to determine with anything like certainty where the one kingdom ends and where the other begins. Plants, however, are in general distinguished from animals in being more rudimental in their organisation, more external in their representative images. But in passing from plants to animals, there is no alteration of the original type. Equally, in the two kingdoms, the recipient sac is found as the basis of every structure, whether simple or complex. In the vegetable kingdom, as well as in the animal, it is but the multiplication and modification in countless variety of the elementary sac that produce plants more distinct from one another in their appearance and the most elaborate in their organisation. Every link in this vast chain, or rather in this reticulated chain of natural affinities, presents some modification or some development by convocation of the rudimental type, and thus do they advance, as by myriads of atomizing branches, towards the perfection of the human body, wherein all uses are representatively fulfilled. Point number 84. Every plant presents a congeries of systems and not the image of a distinct individuality. In this respect, they are like poriferous and the polyporiferous animals, and are unlike the higher animals in whom the image of individuality is complete. Like animals, they have their periodic transformations and partial changes by which they advance towards those higher functions which belong to the perpetuation of their kind. They too, like animals, have their birth from an embryo, and they have also their time of puberty, when a change of function begins to show itself by a portion of their sap being directed into channels which are designed for the formation of the flower, the fruit, and the embryo plant within the fruit. They have their ovaries, in which, as in the uterus of the animal, the ovals or the embryo plants are developed. These are a few of the resemblances among a multitude which plants bear to animals in the representative images of the means which are provided for the perpetuation of their kinds. Point number 85. In their organised structures, plants, like animals, have distinct mouths, by means of which each plant takes up the appropriate kind of food into its system. The minute orifices at the termination of their roots are in their functions little mouths, or in all respects similar to the mouths of animals. The mouths of plants, which serve at the same time the office of stomachs, are universally directed downwards or earthwards, as in many of the simpler kinds of animals. Like almost all the simpler animal structures, plants have the same orifices for absorption and excretion, and by these they imbibe their nourishment from the earth and return such matters as useless and deleterious to their systems. Distinct from this, which is its absorption system, the plant has another which is analogous to the circulating system of animals. This is the ascending and descending current of the fluid called latex. The latex of plants resembles in some respects the blood of animals. Like animal blood, it separates upon exposure to the air into two parts, one of which is of a serous kind and the other of a crassamentous. The vessels by which the latex is conveyed are reticulated, or form a network at their extremities like the blood vessels of animals. The leaves of plants present in their functions several features of resemblance to the lungs of animals. The crude sap, which answers at once to the chyle and to the venous blood in animals, is conveyed from the stem into the leaves and is there changed by the air into those juices which are to nourish the plant and to contribute to the growth of every part. Plants, like animals, alternate in their habits from a state of activity to one of rest, passing into a condition analogous to that of sleep, most of them during the night, but some of them, like nocturnal animals, by day. Plants, like animals, have their temperature increased during the period of organic excitement, which again subsides when that period is past. These examples of resemblance might be multiplied to a considerable extent, especially in those particulars which relate to the production and development of the embryo plant. But enough perhaps has been said to prove, or at least to lay the foundation for proving beyond a doubt that there is no break either in a structure or in function between the two kingdoms, but that the one, by a continuity of plan, is but a further development and elaboration of the other. Point number 86. There is the same ground or reason for the signification of all the objects of the vegetable kingdom in heaven as there is for the objects of the animal kingdom. They are created by the same spiritual means and for the same divine ends. Point number 87. The spiritual means by which in heaven the vegetable kingdom is continually being created are concurrent spheres of life, of a remote and therefore of an external kind. Concurrent spheres of life are the mutual actions and reactions of a congenial affections and thoughts upon one another. By the omnipresence of the divine love, there is an intercommunion of all good affections throughout heaven. But as angels receive the influx of love after a manner and in a measure peculiar to themselves, which peculiarity of reception is determined by the uses that angel is created to fulfill, and by the extent of his spiritual renovation or power of fulfilling them, the communication of those affections, along with the thoughts by which their affections are spiritually clothed, is different in respect to each, and is continually varied in each by changes of state which contribute to exalt the love, the wisdom, and the delights of all. All affections which have an internal affinity to the mind of the percipient angel are spiritually near, and are both internally presented to his mind and externally represented to the faculties of sense by human forms. The human, which is also the angelic appearance, being the highest and most perfect image, by which the internal form of affection and thought can be brought forth to the apperception of the different senses. But those affections which have only an external affinity to the mind of the percipient angel, or which only affect the lower faculties of the mind, are spiritually remote from him. The degree of their remoteness is indicated by the different orders and tribes of the animal kingdom, and by the simpler and still more imperfect structures of the vegetable kingdom. Where the influence of affections and thoughts upon the form and state of his mind is comparatively feeble, the relationship is of an external kind, and these external relationships are represented to him by the imperfect structures of the vegetable kingdom. The varied structures and outward appearances of plants are so many representative signs or images corresponding to the external affinities which certain associated affections and thoughts bear to the percipient angel. And according to the wisdom and love of that angel, he is able to enter in thought into the particulars of those living spheres with their uses, which have served for the production of the trees, plants, shrubs which he beholds around him. By the extension of those spheres of love and thought, or by their fuller and freer admission into his own mind, he multiplies the numbers and varies as well increases the beauty of those appearances. Point number 88. These are the means by which in heaven objects of the vegetable kingdom are created. The divine ends to which the representative forms of both kingdoms, animal and vegetable, are subservient, are the continued increase of happiness and delight to all who suffer themselves to be embraced by the sphere of divine love. As fresh social spheres of goodness and truth are brought within the range of their affections and unfolded to their perceptions, their love for others becomes strengthened and expanded. The wisdom of that love becomes more purely spiritual and its truths more universal, while the representative joys and delights of these interior treasures become correspondentially increased and multiplied. But the crowning use of all is to impart to their minds in the ground of yet more submissive, trustful innocence, the capacity of receiving a fuller measure from the Lord of his love and his wisdom, with their accompanying delights and joys. Point number 89. Lowest in the scale of representative appearances in heaven is the mineral kingdom, which, like the same kingdom in nature, consists of worlds composed of land and water. On these lands, angels appear to themselves to live just as men do in this natural world. As in this world, their lands have different soils from which their trees and plants appear to derive their nourishment. They have mountains and rocks which serve as substrata to the soil. The surface of their world is diversified and adorned with endless varieties of the most enchanting scenery. Mountain, hills, valleys, rivers, and foundations all contribute to fill the mind, awake to the instruction which such scenes convey, with the most exquisite delight. Their earths yield an abundance of minerals and precious stones, from which various works of art surpassing magnificence and beauty seem to the senses to be produced. There is no part in these worlds of representative beauty which is sterile or unsightly, nor anything representatively obnoxious or useless to the higher forms of life. For heaven in its outward aspect, as well as in its interior form, is a kingdom of uses, within the sphere of which nothing hurtful or useless can enter. Point number 90. These worlds on which angels appear to dwell correspond in respect to the objects of the mineral kingdom, to that ultimate basis of all finite consciousness which is comprehended in the love of self. By means of this love, varied as it is according to the peculiar forms of associated minds, but conquered as it ever is in heaven, and made to minister to the love of others, are their mineral worlds created. The representative riches of that kingdom, its fertilizing properties, the sublimity of its mountains, the grandeur of its harmonious masses, its clear, refreshing streams and mountains, its translucent golden atmosphere, are so many representative images actually produced by the different forms of this love when they are associated together in obedience to the higher laws of spiritual and celestial life. It is in consequence of the mineral kingdom being the representative effect of the love of self, which love is the basis of all finite consciousness, that their feet, like ours, appear to rest upon the earth, and to be attracted towards its centre. And for a like reason, the constituents of the mineral kingdom seem in heaven to pass by absorption into the representative forms of the vegetable and animal kingdoms, but in that world by approximation of the correlative spheres. Point number 91. In this way, by the operation of mental spheres upon the representative faculties of sense, is heaven, considered as an outward world, created. By the operation of mental spheres are all the delights of senses produced. But along with the imperfection of the living form of mind, which inadequately or after a finite manner and measure receives the fullness of the divine love, the distinct consciousness of the created mind begins, together with the phenomena of space, which is the representative image or effect of the separating influences inherent in the love of self. Along with the imperfection of the living form that receives the divine wisdom, time, or the sensuous progression of life, begins, which in heaven consists in the changes which the mind undergoes with respect to its thoughts and its sensations. All these changes of state depend upon the susceptibility of the mind, by its regenerated condition, of admitting a fuller influx of other and higher spheres, by which the affections of its love become more comprehensive, the truths of its wisdom more spiritually powerful in the production of fresh uses, and its corresponding sensuous changes are varied and delightful.